I'm not defensive about it.
Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another live show, and welcome to a big week for Chelsea. I know it's Wednesday, but it's a big week for us. Copenhagen Thursday night, Arsenal Sunday, then the international break. A lot at stake this week, potentially season defining if we were to go out. So, yeah, there's a lot to discuss as always. We've got the latest with the style of play. A lot of criticism coming in for the style of play after the game against Leicester. Should we be concerned about Cole Palmer's form? What's going to happen against Copenhagen in the Conference League? Plus many other bits to dive into. Before we get into it, people, make sure you check out Jerseys FC Soccer Shop. Link in the description. Link pinned in the top of the chat as well. Use code BlueBrother for 20% off your Chelsea kits and free shipping. Names, numbers, patches, whatever you want on the back. Make sure you check it out, guys. Link in the description and in the pinned comments. Blue Brother for 20% off. Dan, what's happening, mate? You good?
Yeah, good to be back. I'm all right in myself. I feel like we've had a good amount of Chelsea recently. I feel like we got a break, didn't we, where there wasn't a lot of football for us, and then we've had a few wins, and it feels like a good amount of football to consume. So yeah, I'm good on and off the pitch.
Yeah, mate, it's kind of been a strange run there. I feel like we were fortunate as such to have games against Southampton and Leicester at home, given the run of form that we were on, given how that kind of fell. That was, I don't say it was lucky, but it was quite fortunate for us that, you know, we were able to play the two worst teams in the league at home to sort of get ourselves back on track and get some wins under our belt. Now, look, we've won 3 games in a row in all competitions. Yes, we're fully aware, you know, they're not the greatest level of opposition. Of course they're not, but winning breeds confidence. I mean, there were positives in all of those games, regardless of how badly we played in certain parts of the Leicester game, certain parts of the Copenhagen game, and maybe the first 15 minutes against Southampton. Winning is always a positive thing. So, I mean, do you feel a little bit better now heading into these 2 games before the international break?
I do. I probably do for the Copenhagen one. I'm not so sure about the Arsenal game.
Yeah,
I probably feel better with the Arsenal game off the back of their form than ours, because I think the teams they've played, I think you can learn about what Arsenal might offer against us. But I just feel like against Leicester and Southampton, I'm not too sure what Chelsea have learned or improved on, bar getting 6 points, because I just feel like they're not enough of a test. I feel like currently they're both pretty much championship opposition, so there's a big jump. But I feel like I said going into these 3 fixtures that we just had 4 with Copenhagen during the week this week, that I think Copenhagen will be our biggest test, and I think that's proven true. So I think tomorrow will be a massive game, and maybe off the back of tomorrow, I'll be able to judge it a little bit better with how I feel Chelsea will do.
Mate, what have you made of the criticism of the style of play, especially off the back of the Leicester game? Because I know there's been a few grumblings here and there. There's been people that are just not liking this style of play full stop from the off. But it certainly feels like after the win against Leicester on Sunday that it's really come to the forefront again. And there's a lot of people that don't like it. There's a lot of people that are unhappy about it. I was very surprised after the Leicester game how negative a lot of fans were, despite the fact we'd won. Now, look, don't get me wrong. It wasn't an amazing performance. It wasn't a perfect performance. But given this time last year, we were drawing against Sheffield United and Burnley's 2 each, you know, and we've struggled against teams that put five at the back and sit deep. 1-0 didn't really reflect the game. I thought we didn't create a lot of chances, but we very much were in control. Leicester barely ventured forward, and had Cole Palmer scored his penalty, you know, it would have been a different game. We probably would have won by a wider margin. But I just feel it goes back to Maurizio Sarri almost as well, where Chelsea fans seemingly on the whole do not have patience for possession-based style of football. Now, don't get me wrong, I would admit that if you're not getting the results, it probably is one of the most boring styles of football to watch. But at the same time, we've been crying out for more controlling games. Look how many basketball end-to-end games we were involved in last year. Great for the neutral, not great for us. But, I mean, where do you stand on it, mate? Because I actually don't mind this style of play. I don't mind having more control, having the ball more. Because when you've got the ball, I know it's obvious, but the opposition aren't scoring or they're not causing you any problems. So the better you can keep the ball, you're not only you stopping them from doing anything, you're also tiring them out from them chasing it. So where are you at with the style of play and the criticism, particularly off the back of that Leicester game? Because I think some of it's been quite harsh.
Yeah, I first of all, I think you make a really good point about the Sarri side of things, because I think this is where this stems from. Because I've heard a lot of comparisons regarding Maurizio Sarri's time at Chelsea and how this is similar and it's almost as bad. I look back at Sarri's football and I think, do you know what? It really wasn't that bad. We produced a lot of youngsters. We had some fabulous players sort of coming through at the time. And yeah, at moments it was slow, but people didn't really understand the fact that it was a very vertical system and it was about pulling the team out of their shape to then be able to play through them with ease. And I feel like I see some similarities with Maresca. I think Maresca is intent and is 100% set on control. And I think he wants his team to at times definitely keep control of the ball rather than take a risk. And I think that's where the Chelsea fans are getting frustrated, because they would rather see players take a risk. And I think at times, maybe you could be allowed to take the risk. And I think there has to be maybe a little bit of learning on Maresca's side of things, because I think he'll see that against better opposition, you might have to take more risks in order for something to happen. Against Leicester, I think they'll make mistakes. Against Southampton, they'll make mistakes. But better teams probably won't make as many mistakes when they're out of possession in terms of where they're occupying on the pitch and positional areas. And I think that's what I'd say. But I think people are getting frustrated because the football has been different. I don't think it's been very exciting at times, but ultimately I'd rather be getting 3 points on the board and forgetting about maybe the system at this moment in time, because I think the form prior to these last two games just haven't been great. So look, I think with the complaints about the system, people are trying to run before they can walk a little bit.
Yeah, no, bro, I hear you on that. I also think in terms of risk, I think players will take more risk. I mean, we'll take more risk in general if the circumstances of the game dictate that. You know, that Leicester game didn't necessarily need us to take more risk. But of course, you know, if we're losing and there's 15, 20 minutes left in the game, naturally you're going to take more risks to try and get something out of the game. You're not going to be, you'll stick to your principles to a certain degree, but naturally there's going to be more of a sense of urgency to get the ball forward, to take more risks because you're chasing the game. When you're in the game, you know, there was no need for us against Leicester, for example, to take more risk because we were very comfortable. I know the scoreline was narrow, but Leicester weren't doing anything. The only decent chance they had was the mix-up between Tosin and Sanchez, where he headed it onto the bar. Other than that, they created very, very little. So I think, you know, you're not going to be able to play that counter-attacking style of football like we saw earlier on in the season against teams that play 5 at the back and sit deep, because they're not committing those men forward. So a more possession-based approach with, you know, probing, waiting for the right moment to play a key pass, that's going to be ultimately a better way to getting success, in my opinion.
Yeah, you make a really good point as well about earlier on in the season. I think quite often, if you look at Premier League seasons, there's often a huge difference in how teams will play earlier on in the season, when it almost feels like points are up for grabs and it's exciting, it's fresh, it's new. Whereas later on in the season, when you sort of realise where you are in the league and there's a bit of jeopardy creeping in, or there is a risk to dropping points, I think teams do change. I even think if you look at some of Chelsea's best ever sides, that there's a clear difference between sort of the first few months of the season and the second few months. I think about Mourinho. He would go from playing expansive football to then after Christmas grinding out 1-2-0 wins, making sure that we would get ourselves over the line when it comes to winning trophies. And I think we've seen better teams in the league do exactly the same at times. I think about Liverpool against us earlier on in the season. They knew they were under the cosh for most of that game and they sat in and got the result. And I think it's smart that if Chelsea can control the ball, like you said, keep it away from the opposition, control the outcome of the game, it makes more sense when points haven't been exactly easy for us to get in the last sort of 15 fixtures. So yeah, I'd much rather guarantee the points. And also, very important to mention that winning breeds confidence, and it's much easier to implement the style of football that you want when players are understanding that your methods lead to winning and getting results. So maybe that everyone lost a bit of confidence in what Maresca was trying to do, and he's just focused on getting wins again, getting points, moving us up the table, and making it clear that we want to get Champions League football. Because I feel like the way they're celebrating at the end of games shows to me that actually a few things have been said that might not actually be the case with what's being said in the dressing room. I think they're intent on getting Champions League football.
I would agree. That I understand why you're always going to get it though. You're always going to get certain sections of fan bases that are going to police people's opinions, police how a manager should celebrate. The one that gets me is funny, right? Is that people that were criticising Maresca for his reaction after that win on Sunday against Leicester are the same people lapping up what Lampard's doing at Coventry. And by the way, I'm a massive fan of Frank Lampard. Love him. Great to see him doing so well. But at the same time, right, don't be doing up Lampard prop and then calling Maresca a championship manager when Lampard is in the championship himself and celebrating like that after every single win. And yet you criticise Maresca for celebrating a win.
I've got no problem with the celebration, by the way. I've got no issue with that.
It's almost like people just are picking things to pick holes at.
Honestly, Charlie, I don't care who we beat as long as we beat them. And if the manager wants to celebrate, do you know, I remember one of the first sort of things that won over managers like Tuchel, Antonio Conte was their passion. Even Mourinho. Yeah. No matter who we played against, they'd celebrate every goal. They'd head and kick every movement on the pitch. I've got no issue with Maresca celebrating like that. And it shows that they're all together in a time where the club's got a lot of uncertainty around it and a lot of complaints from so many directions. Actually, as a playing staff and coaching staff, they're very tight-knit. They're very together and they've got an aim. And as much as Maresca might say things, I think, in the press that and in his post-match conferences that don't always come across great, I think you can read a lot on his actions and he'll be telling you what he really wants off the back of his reactions.
Well, mate, this is the same fan base that rightfully criticised Pochettino for being so passive and lacking any passion or anything or celebrating any major wins for the majority of last season, and then criticising the very thing they were wanting. It's a mad one. It really is strange. But go on.
I was just going to say, and we're going into that point in the season as well where some teams are absolutely fighting for their Premier League survival, and that is Southampton and Leicester. Some teams are finding themselves safe already, and they'll start to be on holiday. And these can be very, very difficult fixtures to navigate. I look at Ipswich coming up in a few weeks. That's another fixture that people go, oh, that should be guaranteed 3 points. But that'll be a very, very difficult to navigate because of where Ipswich are in the table. They're fighting for their Premier League survival. These fixtures are tough. And these teams do sit back and don't allow a lot of space, don't allow a lot of room for you to maneuver. And they make games very, very tough to get through because that's the only option they have left anymore to try and get points in the Premier League.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, taking it more back to the football side of things, what are your thoughts on a goalkeeping situation? Because once again, I was under the impression that Jorgensen was going to be in now for the rest of the season. Maresca said many times, he said it after the Villa game, if I changed players every time they made a mistake, I'd be changing like 3/4 of the team every single week. We saw Sanchez in the Conference League. Fine, no problem. That's what the second choice goalkeeper does, plays in the cups. But then we see him back in against Leicester on Sunday. Now, my first thought was, what's going on here? But then when I thought about it, I was like, maybe, just maybe, he's doing what he did earlier in the season, where when Jorgensen was number 2, he played Jorgensen against Southampton and he played Jorgensen against Ipswich when he was second choice keeper. He was giving him minutes against the relegation teams. Now, I'm hoping it's that, but part of me feels that like Sanchez could be back in the fold. And if he is, that goes to show to me that, in my opinion, there's pressure from whether it's Ben Roberts or whoever it might be to play this guy in goal, because there's no way he's legitimately replacing Jorgensen with Sanchez that soon again after dropping him. I mean, and also, you don't want to be chopping and changing your goalkeeper all the time. Have your number 1 goalkeeper and stick with him. I mean, what were you surprised to see Sanchez in?
No, actually, I'll be honest. I really haven't thought Jorgensen's taken his opportunity, to be honest with you. I think there's been a couple of question marks. I thought against Brighton, he was beaten quite easily. I think there's been a few mistakes that he's made. I think, was it Villa?
Villa almost a howler where he just went
absolute howler. Look, I'm not saying by any means that I think Sanchez should be Chelsea's number 1, but I think Jorgensen didn't give himself 100% reason to remove the the 1 and 2 debate. I think he hasn't, like, what do they say, covered himself in
Glory. Yeah.
glory. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he's been amazing, and I don't think he's done enough for me to believe he's number one going to the end of the season. I think there's been a big issue for me with Jorgensen in possession. I actually don't think his decision making is fast enough. And I think that's the one thing I'd back Sanchez on, is although sometimes it comes with a lot of risk, I believe his decision making is better when he's got the ball at his feet. And I think that plays in Maresca's mind. Now, I think there's something to be said about what you said, in the fact that maybe he sees the Copenhagen game and as more important, and he might play Jorgensen. I'm not sure who currently is viewed as the preference in goal, but I don't actually believe either are probably good enough to lead us forward as the number one.
No, but I think that's absolutely right. I think when you look at Jorgensen, for example, I'm always going to back him over Sanchez, generally speaking. Of course, there's aspects of the game that Sanchez is better than Jorgensen at. But overall, I think Jorgensen in general, over a course of a season, would probably make less costly errors than Sanchez. But having said that, Jorgensen's still only 22. Now, goalkeepers develop at a much slower rate, I would say, than outfield players. Goalkeepers, you might not get to your best until you're 30 almost.
Yeah.
Sometimes speaking.
Look at Emi Martinez.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, we don't really know how good Jorgensen is. This is the problem. We don't really know how good he is. But in an ideal situation, Jorgensen, in a strange way, could probably benefit from a season at Strasbourg, for example. But at the same time, you're probably going to send Mike Penders there next season. So, it's tricky, really. But ultimately, you cannot have indecisiveness in your goalkeeping situation. You should only be making a change in goal for cup competitions, and if there's an injury or a chronic loss of form when you're then making a change. He's in 1 week, and then we'll have 3 weeks of someone else, and then someone else goes in. You can't do it. You simply cannot do it.
It brings uncertainty to, one, the goalkeeper, and two, the defense. They don't know who they're going to be playing with. I think there's differences in style with both as well. I think the defense need to be incredibly alert when Sanchez is in goal, because they know he's going to take risks and they know it could backfire. And I think with Jorgensen, they don't know enough about him yet to know exactly what he's going to do, because, like we said, no one's really seen enough of him to know what his personality looks like on the pitch in terms of what he might choose to do. Or there's a moment I keep thinking back to with Jorgensen, and I think it was Southampton, I think.
On the 5-0 the 4-0 the other week.
It could have been Southampton for the first sort of maybe like 15 minutes, and we were sort of under pressure early on, and they were sort of holding their shape quite well high up the pitch, Southampton. And he was on the ball, and he sort of stand, look up, and not know what to do with it. And the fans were getting on his back at Stamford Bridge. They were starting to boo a little bit, and they were starting to like jeer, and they were sort of suggesting that he didn't sort of understand what he was supposed to do, or is that the fans believe in Maresca's told him that's what should happen. But for me, I'm just still not sold on either keeper. And I think ultimately it comes down to recruitment being the biggest issue, that we shouldn't have this dilemma. And ultimately, I don't think Petrovic did enough wrong to be sent out on loan off the back of last season, when we weren't sure about anyone being in goal going forward for this season.
Mate, I'm still convinced that the only reason Petrovic was sent on loan is because no one wanted Sanchez. I honestly, genuinely think two things. One, Ben Roberts has got so much influence over Robert Sanchez at Chelsea, and secondly, no one wanted him. If someone put money on the table for Sanchez, I think Chelsea would have taken it. And there's a big decision to be made this summer now, because reports have said that, Petrovic will come back and compete for the number one shirt. Well, Petrovic, Sanchez, and Jorgensen all can't compete for that slot. One of those three has to be sold. Now, it should be Robert Sanchez, but I think we all know what's going to happen. Despite what reports are saying, Petrovic is going to get you the most money, and Petrovic is probably the easiest one to sell out of the three of those. But yeah, it's just, again, it just goes back to recruitment, doesn't it? It's one of those where, with the amount of money spent on goalkeepers and how many we've signed, to not have a single good one or to not know how good some of them are going to be for several years is incredible.
I completely agree with you. I feel like the goalkeeping position is probably one of the most important to get right in a team. Incredibly important for the manager you're hiring. You have to make sure in these days that you have a manager that fits the profile of you have a goalkeeper that fits the profile that the manager's going to have and a style. And I feel like we were recruiting these goalkeepers without knowing the direction we wanted to go in a footballing sense. And I'm not sold by any of them. I think maybe they need to take a second look at potentially either recruiting again in that position and trying to offload a couple of the keepers that they've got, because I think you're right. There's going to be definite disagreements with playing time and sort of stature in where they stand in terms of the three in the pecking order. There'll be issues there. And I think you're right. Petrovic is the easiest asset to sell right now because he's off the back of a really impressive season at Strasbourg. And I think arguably he's a better player off the back of this season than he was when he went there on loan. Because his stats show distribution-wise he's improved massively.
Strasbourg kept 5 clean sheets in a row now. First time that's happened in 41 years. Petrovic is having a very good season. Look, if it was down to me, I'd sign a new goalkeeper this summer.
Yeah,
but I'd happily waive signing a new goalkeeper if Petrovic is number 1 next season. Because if we're being honest here, yes, a goalkeeper is important, but a striker, a centre-back and a left winger are probably more important for the squad than a new goalkeeper is right now. For me personally, I would say that goalkeeper is probably 3rd or 4th choice of importance behind a striker and a centre-back. But yeah, we'll wait and see what happens. There's a lot of people calling out Colwill. Now, I'll be real. I've said many times, Colwell's not been that great this season. However, I feel that people hold Colwill to a ridiculously high standard in terms of the fact that, they seem to forget he's 21. They seem to forget this is just his 2nd full season of playing Premier League football. Yes, he played at Brighton, but he wasn't a regular every single week. He was bedded in last season, had Thiago Silva alongside him. I think he's done okay this season, but obviously with Wesley Fofana out the side, it's definitely impacted him. I think certainly sections of the fan base have absolutely overhyped Colwill, have absolutely made him out to be way better than he potentially is at this point in time. But I think the criticism of him has been quite harsh personally. I'm fully of acceptance that he's not been great this season and he's made mistakes. But I think the way that some people have been talking about him, I think it's pretty harsh, given he's 21, given his lack of experience, given he's been tasked with leading the back line, which he's not ready for. Let's be honest. Where do you stand on it? Because there's a lot of Chelsea fans that don't seem that keen on him or have heavily been critical of his performances. I just think some of that's a little bit harsh.
Yeah, I think defensively, he's been available for the majority of games. What's he played? 26 games this season.
Yeah, he's played most of them, yeah.
Yeah, he's been there for most of them, which is a rarity for the majority of our centre-backs right now. I think he's a leader. I think he understands what it is to play for Chelsea and what it means. I think he's been brought up in the academy with the right type of attitude and understanding how important it is to win at this club. And I think he shows that on the pitch. I think he has potential to be a leader. I think this season might be underwhelming, but you have to remember that he's barely had a settled defence around him for the whole season. Cucurella probably has been the most settled option, but other than that, he's had a varying goalkeeper, a varying partner in centre-back, a varying full-back inverting or not. He's had varying partners across the back three, different shapes, back four sometimes. So, yeah, I think it's been a really tough season for Levi, but to be honest with you, it's not unheard of for a young 21, 22-year-old to go through a season like this and come out of it on the other side being better off the back of it. I think they have to learn, they have to get experience, and this is what it looks like. This is it's not a linear progression. And for me, I can see great attributes in Levi's game. I think there were moments against Leicester and I think Southampton where he looked really comfortable getting on the ball, stepping forward. I think he looks a better player with Tosin alongside him. I think Tosin is old enough and has enough experience to sort of coach him through a game, talk to him a lot. I think he's missed that. I think you mentioned Thiago Silva was a huge help for him last season, and he's not had that. But look, he's had a couple of seasons at Chelsea now, and it's been very, very all over the place and very volatile in the sense that he's played at left back, he's played at centre back, never really had a settled defence. I think this is stuff that puts him in good stead to go on to being a really, really top centre back. And you have to remember how many 21, 22-year-old centre backs are at the top of their game. Like, it's very, very rare.
Yeah, no, it is.
I don't even know how old, like Saliba. I don't know how old Saliba is, but
Arsenal sent Saliba on loan for 2 seasons.
What I mean. Yeah, you've got to go and learn, and you've got to go and find that experience and find out what makes you a top defender.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. But this point here is like every player does that. Every player is going to want some sort of assurances over before they sign a contract. Now,
that would be the same for any job, by the way, in any walk of life. Because if you were to go and sign into a contract for a job, and then they could potentially replace you in a week, you wouldn't feel very good about it. So,
you're not going to sign that, are you? So of course every single player is going to seek some assurances about how they're viewed in the squad or in the workplace before committing themselves to that. You're not going to sign a contract and then, if they say, oh, by the way, you're going to be on the bench every single week and you're not really part of the plans, well, you're obviously not going to sign it. You're going to seek some sort of assurances. So look, there's many things you can criticize Colwill about this season, but that for me, you can't criticize someone for wanting assurances before signing a contract, because every single football player will want some level of assurances before committing themselves to signing a contract. That's how this works. Now, I would agree in certain instances that Colwill, is still learning, still needs to make improvements, but I don't think he's been anywhere near as bad as what people make out. And also, what I would say is I don't think that there'd be anywhere near as much criticism if he wasn't from Cobham. I think for some reason, mate, I don't know if you feel this, but for some reason, there seems to be a certain section of the fan base that really dislikes Cobham.
Yeah, there is. I think we saw it with other products that have been here in recent years, and they've been disliked and sort of in some parts of the fan base almost pushed out and made a scapegoat of recent failings or recent performance in seasons gone by. They've been like the scapegoat, haven't they? So yeah, look, I don't know with Levi. I think there was a lot of hype coming in off the back of the Brighton season, where I don't think he actually played that much. And he was very young and he's still very raw. I don't actually think he's changed too much since then. I don't think there's much of a difference since he returned from loan. But last year, I kind of write that off because it was such a weird season for him. He was so young. He's been played out of position. And I obviously, it was a completely different system to how we're going to go moving forwards. This season under Maresca's the first season he's had. I think there are bigger issues in Chelsea's defence than worrying about Levi Colwill's current trajectory. I think having players like Badashile in the squad is an issue. I don't think he's good enough, first and foremost. I think he's been okay at times this season. But for me, Badashile is probably classed as the more experienced defender for that left-sided role. And that would be an issue for me. So, yeah, I do hear you. I think if Levi was an import and had been bought for a lot of money, people might be getting behind him a little bit more than what they are for the fact that he came through Cobham. And, yeah, look, we could go through a number of players that have come through Cobham have definitely been slated for who they are.
Yeah, no, bro, I absolutely agree.
By the way, Ben Chilwell didn't come through Cobham.
No, Colwill didn't come through Cobham. No, Chilwell, sorry, didn't come through Cobham. Yeah. It is an interesting point. It is an interesting point, and really, we shouldn't have put him in a position where he's expected to lead the back line this soon into his football career. Very few players. And look, Saliba is obviously much better than Colwill. They're roughly the same age. Saliba is comfortably better than Colwill. Not even a discussion.
I didn't realise that, but yeah.
Not even a discussion. I'd agree with you. At the end of the day. But there's very few centre-backs that at 21, 22 are established and leading the back line for their team. So you're looking at the very best of the very best. And also, people develop at different rates. Saliba's this good now. I'm not saying he won't, but there's a chance he might not get that much better. But with
Yeah, of
Colwill,
course. Yeah, definitely. It
but
can
with
even
Col-
out, can't it? Like
yeah,
some people excel at a younger age and then
yeah.
sort of it all levels out.
But with Colwill, I personally feel, and I could be wrong here, but I personally feel there is quite a lot of room for improvement with him still. Now, look, he might not turn out to be as good as what people expect. There's every chance of that. But I'm always going to support one of my own. I'm always going to get behind one of our own. And I'm always going to support players that put the shirt on. Yeah, he's made mistakes this season. Yeah, he's not been great. But, I personally, I just feel that some of the hate is massively overhyped. Is massively over the top, really. But I mean, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. But Colwell's not the reason that we are where we are right now. Colwell's is by far the biggest of Chelsea's issues.
I definitely agree with that. This hate, by the way, this hate thing that's put on players that are representing your club, I've never really understood it. I get that some players can be underperforming and not doing well enough. But I don't understand the dislike that comes with it towards who they are, just as a person, and that's always baffled me because I agree with you. I think Levi will learn, will get better physically. He's got all the attributes you need to be a top centre back. If he can add the skill and the understanding to that, I think it'll be a really, really good centre back. But people need to understand as well that Chelsea isn't the place that it was, and this is a place now where young players are being sort of nurtured and mentored and hoping to be the success for the next decade, whereas before there was a priority for winning, and I think that's blurred a little bit now, and people need to realize that's the case under the current ownership, and I don't think it will be changing anytime soon.
And I also feel that people are so quick to write players off nowadays. Like, players criticize players for their form, absolutely no problem. Every player's got room for improvement. Every player's going to go through runs of form where they're not playing well, and they'll be criticized. That's what happens. But the same people that are criticizing Colwill right now are the same ones that were slating Cucurella in his first season, and now absolutely love him. Now, but by the way, not every player that's not doing well is going to end up with a Cucurella style story at Chelsea. They won't. But that Cucurella's story should tell us that we shouldn't write players off so quickly. And I just feel that within the fan base, I'm not going to blindly back players, without any evidence or whatever. But the Cucurella story should tell us that in general, fans need to be more patient with players.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually think that works so nicely for Levi Colwill because I think patience is huge in that case. I think there are so many promising attributes that patience in his game will only make him a better player as well. And if the fans are sort of being irritable and pressurizing him into doing something because that's what they want to see from him, I feel like it will only make him sort of take longer to develop. Actually, we need to give him time and get behind the kid. And look, if in 2-3 seasons time when he's 24 we're having this same discussion, maybe then we have to say, look, is he going to be on the trajectory we all thought? But for right now, I think as long as he's surrounded by the right type of people in that defense, yes, I think that defense still needs improvement. But if he's learning off the right people, then I think he's in a good place. And as long as he's getting a good amount of game time, that's what I think is needed right now for Levi Colwill, and I think that is what we want to see from him for the next 2 years, and then I think we could probably judge where he's at then as a pretty much developed individual and sort of see where his career is heading then. To be honest with you,
I agree. I mean, we must have different expectations or different ideas because Cucurella is no one expected Cucurella to sign for us and be the best left back in the league.
I did not expect Cucurella to score goals like in big moments or things like that either, which he's done.
Now, if
Cucurella's story is incredible when you actually think about it.
It is. And look, if you look EPL type, if you felt that this is what you expected from Cucurella when we signed him, then fair enough. That's your expectations. But I think the general expectation at Chelsea with Cucurella was come in, be a decent left back, and hopefully help the team. I don't think anyone really felt he was going to come in and develop the way that he has over the last season and a bit, become the most important left back. Sorry, the best left back in the Premier League, become one of the best left backs in the world currently right now on form, and have the influence that he has on the team now and how important he is to this team.
Yeah, he's become a winner. I mean, you saw him the other day where he was down at the shed, like Matty Dav and the rest of them, and they were all like giving it the big one, and he was as well. And I think for a player to come into Chelsea and struggle like Cucurella did and be so underwhelming, to turn it around is almost unheard of. There's been a number of players that have come in, and once you don't hit the ground running at Chelsea, it becomes incredibly tough to ever turn it around. And for Cucurella to do that, I think is absolutely amazing. I can barely think of many Chelsea players to do that. And I was going to mention that point as well that I just saw.
Point.
He's won the Euros with Spain and was instrumental. So I believe there is a winner there now with Cucurella.
But people talk about, he's not good enough to win us Prems. Not one player doesn't win you a Premier League. Would you have said that?
Especially a left back.
Eddie, is Victor Moses good enough to win you a Premier League? You would have said no. Like, this is the thing, it's about who you surround them with. Not every single a team, a squad of 15, 16 players wins you a Premier League title. You don't have to have outstanding in every single position across the pitch. You don't.
Andy Robertson in his best season didn't on his own win Liverpool the Premier League, or Ashley Cole in his best season didn't win Arsenal or Chelsea the Premier League. They're hugely instrumental to it, but it's not on their shoulders.
It's a strange one. That it really is. Cucurella is right now. Cucurella is top class. He's been outstanding for us. He's right in the running to win Chelsea's Player of the Year, in my opinion. It'll be him or Caicedo. Whoever has a better end to the season, we'll see. But mate, moving ahead to the Copenhagen game. Obviously, we're 2-1 up from the first leg. We haven't got as many options to rotate really because of injuries and because of how many of the Conference League squad left in January. We're 2-1 up from the first leg, which is great. Disappointing to concede that late goal, though. Could have been more comfortable, could have maybe made a few more changes if we were 2 up. It's annoying that this game is sort of 3 days before the massive game against Arsenal. Mate, how are you expecting us to approach this one? Because do you think there's half an eye on Arsenal? Because there's not that many changes we can make. I'd love not to play Enzo and Caicedo in this game. I'd love not to play Cole Palmer. I'd love not to play a lot of these guys. But unfortunately, with the options we've got right now, a lot of these guys are going to have to play, which is not ideal.
Yeah, I think Enzo Maresca was pretty surprised by what that first leg posed as an obstacle, to be honest. I think he felt that would be very similar to the rest of the Conference League games that we've had so far. And I think Copenhagen were probably a level above. And I think that's why he probably risked playing the young striker up front. And I think he quickly learned his lesson that at halftime he was going to have to do something different. So I'd expect a stronger team going into this game than what we started in the last fixture against Copenhagen. And yes, as much as one eye might be on the job at Arsenal, I would think he goes to try and get the job done early and bring those players off if he can.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's what you're going to have to go with. I mean, Reece James obviously in training today. He missed the game at the weekend against Leicester through illness. We didn't really need him anyway. Mate, what do you make of the Reece James in midfield experiment, as it were? Because it looks like maybe he'll do that on Thursday. I think it's almost a certainty that against Arsenal on Sunday, he definitely starts in midfield. What are your thoughts on it? What were your thoughts on Maresca saying he's viewed him as a midfielder since day one? I mean, do you see that could you see Reece being converted to a full-time midfielder at Chelsea? Because I still have my doubts about that.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, to be honest with you. The fact that Maresca said he viewed him as a midfielder from day one is probably because he has such a hatred to your traditional overlapping fullback, to be honest with you. It's something he doesn't want on his side, and he's so reluctant to use those that he probably felt, where do I play Reece? I prefer him in midfield than I do at centre-back. I think he looks a bit more comfortable there. I think Reece is a goal threat, no matter where he is on the pitch, and he showed that in the first game. I'm not sure on Reece's durability anymore. And to be an up and down fullback in the way that he was, I'm not sure that's something that is a good contingency plan for the rest of his career, based on the amount of injuries he's had and the amount of disruption it's led to in his career. So potentially going forwards in midfield is an option if it means he can manage himself a little bit better and have less situations where he's missing huge periods of time in his career, maybe. But actually, as a midfielder, I believe, although he's got experience a couple of times at Chelsea and obviously at Wigan, he had a lot of game time there. I believe his best position would still be out wide as a wing back. To be honest with you, I just feel like it suits him so naturally, and I feel like there'll be an adaptation period to a midfield role.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. And look, if Maresca played sort of traditional overlapping fullbacks, I would absolutely prefer Reece James at right back. But if Maresca's going to do the inverting thing and Reece becomes a right centre back, and you take away the part of his game going forward, and he's not getting many balls in the box, he's not having much of an influence in the attacking third of the pitch, then I'd almost rather see him in midfield. I think, one, it's less taxing on his body. Two, he's got the physicality and the technical ability. And three, as we saw in the first leg, he can still get into advanced positions and pop up with a goal here and there. Now, do I think Reece James long-term is going to be a midfielder? I'm not sure. There's not really space for him in the squad to be a full-time midfielder. You've got Enzo, Caicedo, Lavia, Andre Santos is going to come back. That's four there. So, what is Reece James then going to be competing with those for minutes in midfield? I don't see where he gets in on a regular basis in midfield in that scenario. So, I think for the time being, until Lavia comes back, Reece will continue to play in midfield.
Reece is also, although very, very small amount of evidence, is definitely way more of a midfielder who would be based on output than someone like Lavia, someone like Caicedo. I feel like Reece could have the ability to score a number of goals and create big chances from midfield just because of his mentality on the pitch. I feel like it's so different to someone like Lavia. Lavia would be more sort of focused on breaking up the play, looking to dictate the tempo of the game, create opportunities and openings in the middle of the park. Whereas Reece is someone who's on the front foot, looking to break the lines between midfield and attack. And I mean, that goal was a prime example of what I would hope Reece could do in midfield. It was a fantastic finish. I mean, it kind of looked like it was rolling into the goal, but it was so accurate and so well timed to where the goalkeeper was in that moment that the goalkeeper had absolutely no chance. Yes, fitness is obviously being maintained. I see ACFC says there he's had 14 games fit and available now, apart from last game, but it wasn't down to an injury in the hamstrings or a new reoccurring incident. But for me, those minutes have been managed, and what he's been doing on the pitch has been managed. This is not the same Reece James that we saw under Thomas Tuchel or Frank Lampard all those years ago now.
No, it's absolutely not. It's going to be a very interesting one because, yeah, that big game against Arsenal on Sunday, I'd expect that to be in the back of the mind. I mean,
do you think Reece starts on then?
So what restart? I think he starts on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. So what? Obviously, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but what do you see with do you see him in midfield starting against Arsenal?
I think so. Yeah. I think he will. Yeah. I do think
I'd be intrigued to see it because I feel like he could really help us to win that midfield battle against Arsenal in there with his physicality and everything that he adds for sure.
I mean, he might not. He might just go Enzo Caicedo and have Reece as a right back inverting. Yeah. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if he started in midfield. But look, I don't see him converting long term to a midfield player. I think this role is two things. One, it's easier on his body to get him fit and match ready again, and secondly, it helps us combat the loss of Lavia at the moment. If Lavia had been available all this time, I personally don't feel we would have seen Reece James in midfield if Lavia had been fit and available, because there would have been no need for it.
Yeah, so, I'd agree with that, actually. I feel like we looked at our best this season, didn't we, with Lavia, Enzo? Maybe not. Maybe Lavia, Caicedo.
Some of our best performances was when Caicedo played right back.
Yeah, against Villa.
And you had Lavia and Enzo Fernandez in midfield. We had that against Aston Villa at home, one of our best performances. Yeah. And we also did it against Tottenham away, which we played pretty well as well. I know he switched it at half time, but we played pretty well in that game, in that game as well. So yeah, there's definitely options there. But I mean, mate, how do you see this Copenhagen game going? Because obviously the first half was poor, no doubt about it. Second half, we obviously did a lot better. The changes made a difference, and the quality kind of told in the end. You expecting a similar kind of game? I'll be honest, Copenhagen aren't that good. The home advantage is gone. Obviously, they make a great atmosphere there. The ultras and supporters are very, very good. They probably make a lot of noise to Stamford Bridge as well. Do you foresee any difficulties? See, I don't want to say that this is a gimme game because no game is, but I'd be surprised if we encountered any major issues.
Yeah, so would I. I think we get this job done. I think like I said, I think that game surprised a lot of people in the coaching staff and the playing staff on that previous Thursday night. I would think that this game is taken a lot more seriously now than the first leg was, because I think they realise that this team are not that good, but they're capable of hurting Chelsea and they're capable of making the game very, very tough. Yeah, I think that the atmosphere is so important for games like that as well. And I think Copenhagen thrive with the atmosphere their fans created. And I think ultimately this is what I was saying last season. It's so important for this young group of players to go and play European football and build a winning mentality, because these European nights in stadiums like that, they can be very, very tricky games to navigate, no matter the quality of the opposition. And I think ultimately they're huge for the learning curve and trajectory of improving as a player. So yeah, I think they would have already learned their lesson and they'll go into this game fired up. I think they'll have a taste for getting through into the next round. I think it's hard not to. When you see all these massive Champions League games going on and the Europa League clashes happening, you sort of look as a player and think, I want to be in those. So there's such an importance for us to do well in this Conference League to put us into good stead for next season, being in a better European competition. So I think the hunger will be there, that they'll want to get this done and they'll want to be serious about this competition now to the end to make sure we win it.
No, I agree. No, but what we're not understanding here, mate, is that Lavia is not going to go straight into the starting lineup. He hasn't played since the draw against Bournemouth on January 14th. He didn't get any minutes off the bench against Leicester. He's not playing on Thursday night because he's not in the squad. I would be absolutely shocked and stunned if Lavia starts against Arsenal on Sunday. I would be very surprised.
If he does start, he'll be limited minutes like he was against Liverpool earlier on in the season, where he had to come off at half time.
Morecambe in the cup when he come back, they gave him and James a half as well. I'm not saying it's impossible for Lavia not to start against Arsenal, but I'd be very surprised if you put him back in for a massive game like that, given how cautious Chelsea have been with reintegrating players from injury. It's one thing coming back from injury and playing against Morecambe at Stamford Bridge. It's another thing coming back after 2 months out and going straight into a game at the Emirates. I'd be very, very surprised. I'm not saying it's impossible, by the way. I would just be very surprised on that front. No, Jackson's not expected back until after the international break. Neither's Madueke and neither is Guiu. So yeah, there's still a few injuries there. Mate, let's go for a little team tomorrow. Who do you think's in? I know we spoke about this earlier. Who do you think's in goal tomorrow?
I'm going to say Jorgensen. I just think for the nature of the rotation, I feel like it might be Jorgensen.
Yeah, I do as well. I mean, apparently there's no Gusto. Chelsea are doing an open training session at Cobham right now. Apparently there's no Gusto in training at the moment. So,
right.
I would, no Malo Gusto still after he limped off against Copenhagen last week. Fair enough. He's unlikely to play then. So, I mean, surely, mate, it should be Josh Acheampong at right back. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's Trevor Chalobah.
Yeah, I was going to say it could be Trevor. I was going to say that.
What are your thoughts, though, mate? Just on Acheampong quickly, right? Because we froze him out. He then signed the new deal. He was brilliant against Crystal Palace. I thought he played quite well in that draw against Bournemouth. Okay, maybe he got slightly turned for one of the goals. He was then subbed off in that Bournemouth game, and we literally did not see him again until the pity minutes he got at the end against Leicester. So something's not adding up here. We've made him false promises because there's no pathway for him. Because if Chalobah's playing ahead of him at right back, right, when Chalobah's not even a right back, James and Gusto are there as well. Plus at centre back, we're going to go and sign another centre back. You've got Mamadou Sarr coming from Strasbourg. You've still got Ansel Mino. There's not really a looking for Acheampong there. And now he suddenly found himself bang out of favour. Something for me is not adding up here.
Yeah, I almost feel like the pathway was there when he was being isolated and frozen out. That the window was wide open of opportunity, and he wasn't available because the club had deemed him not worthy of representing the club at that moment in time, which just seems such a wasted moment in the guy's development. But yeah, going forwards, I feel like we gave him some minutes, gave him some opportunities, got the contract signed, and then sort of left him be and let him sort of fight for a place and struggle to break into the first team. It's almost like it was planned, and that would always be the case. I mean, he's still a youngster. There's a lot of players in front of him.
He's 19, isn't he? But it's
Yeah.
obviously very young. I'll be honest, Chelsea Godfather, I don't see the pathway for him because
I think injuries have to happen.
Yeah, James is 25 and Gusto's 21, 22. There's no real pathway at right back. At centre back, you've got Colwill, Fofana. You're going to go and sign another one. That's 3. Tosin probably still knocking about 4. And maybe Badiashile will still be here. You go, or Vega comes back. That's 5. I don't see a pathway for him there either. So I'd love to be wrong, but realistically, I would not be surprised if Achimpong was sold this summer. I really wouldn't.
No, but that was sort of what I was trying to get to without saying it. Is that I think the whole reason they wanted that contract signed was to protect the value in the player.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think he's ultimately may have been played in that sense. I think Josh looks like a really talented player. I feel like the return of Trevor Chalobah ultimately probably closed any sort of window of opportunity for him, because we didn't have that in the first half of the season when there was moments Josh could have got games. I feel like Josh looks like a really promising player, and he's a player that I'd want to see representing Chelsea if the opportunity's there. Right now, I'd agree with you. I think the pathway looks pretty narrow, and if opportunities do arise, they're going to be very limited minutes like they were against Leicester, or they'll be off the back of players getting injured and will be sort of lightweight in certain areas that he'd be required. But in terms of minutes and competing for a spot to start or some guaranteed minutes off the bench, I don't see it either. I'll be honest with you.
I mean, he should be starting tomorrow, and I would like to see him start right back. So I'm going to stick him in. But the reality is, mate, it's more than likely going to be Chalobah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it'll be Chalobah, probably, because earlier on in the season it would have been Disasi occupying that slot.
Exactly.
Chalobah's basically the like for like, and I think that's what he'll do.
I mean, in the middle, I don't think Colwill plays. I'm pretty sure Badiashile plays, and I think probably Tosin plays as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I think Tosin Badiashile is probably the most likely back 3 there.
And then unfortunately you're going to have to play Cucurella.
You have to. We've left ourselves with no option there, which is something I think me and you spoke about at length during the January window, that was going to be an issue going forwards. The only thing I sort of wondered is whether or not he'd look at Dewsbury Hall as a potential versatile option at an inverted left back.
He's played him all over the place recently, hasn't he?
That's what I was wondering. If he is concerned about minutes, because honestly, I think if Cucurella needs a rest, I'm looking at it thinking they have to play probably Badiashile. Oh, you reckon invert Gusto? Yeah, that's a good point. Invert Gusto. Although if he's injured as well, then maybe.
Oh yeah, you have got a problem. But look, I think that I'd like to see that. I mean, midfield, Dewsbury Hall definitely plays. Plays somewhere there. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the same thing again, by the way, where maybe Caicedo starts and we see him and Enzo swap at half time, like in the first leg.
Yeah, limit them to 45 minutes, keep them ticking over, maintain fitness, and hopefully reduce the risk of fatigue-based injuries. So, yeah, I'd agree with that.
And then the big question here is, mate, do you play Cole Palmer in this game?
Yeah, I would, because I think that he needs a break. He needs something, and he against an easier opposition, hopefully the goal could come, because there'd be nothing better than having a Cole Palmer fit and firing again, going into... Well, apparently he wasn't even 100% fit at the Leicester game. But
no, he was ill. We didn't train for 2 days before.
So obviously there's something going around Cobham at the moment. So ultimately, if other players are missing out going into this fixture, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I would play Cole Palmer in that 10. Give him an opportunity to score. Give him an opportunity to just break this horrible run of form and sort of lack of confidence he's found himself in, and get him ready to go for the Arsenal and international break if he does get selected. Hopefully he'll be good to go for them. So
I would probably stick with him as well. The reality is, though, mate, there's not really many other options. I mean, you could play Nkunku there, but
Nkunku was the one I thought was a potential there.
but then you'd have to play Sancho. No, I don't know if he wants to play Sancho, but if you played Nkunku in this Palmer role, you then have to go. You then have to play Sancho and George.
Yeah,
because Neto's not going to play. So it's a mad one. I mean, mate, do you go in the wide areas? I'll probably go Nkunku on the left. I know he wasn't great against Leicester. Please stick with him there, and then you play George on the right.
I'm just trying to remember. How long did Sancho? Who got more minutes at the weekend? I was just trying to remember out of Nkunku and Sancho.
I think Sancho got more minutes.
Did he? Yeah, it's tough. I think George is a very likely option. And Nkunku is another player that could do with a goal. So leaving him, I mean, at this level as well, he's done well this season. But yeah, probably looking like he should be playing then in that case, because going into Arsenal, I'd probably rather Sancho rested and ready to go for that one as well.
Yeah, George is not going to play against Arsenal. I mean, look, by the way, I think Tyreek George should have started against Leicester personally, just because I think in recent weeks he's offered more than Jadon Sancho has.
I'd agree with you. He's definitely earned more minutes than he's had recently. I mean, against Brighton, I felt like he was the only person attacking-wise that had an idea of what he was meant to do.
He was the only one that came on and really offered anything at all. The only one that came on and kind of offered anything. I mean, yeah, look, Sancho, I mean, Sancho could easily start this game, but I personally don't see Maresca starting him. I don't see Neto starting either. I mean, mate, would you continue with Shin Moheca down the middle?
Personally, I wouldn't. I feel. Do you know what? I want to say this because I feel like Maresca openly criticizing him off the back of last game didn't sit that well with me. I felt like he gave him the opportunity to play, and to then sort of say that he didn't do well enough was. I don't know if that's something that just gets lost in translation or in his culture.
We didn't give him the ball. We literally didn't give him the ball. Yeah,
that's the whole issue I had with it, was the way he set the team up to play was just never going to help the kid in the first place. So I had a bit of an issue with that, because I feel like if you're going to give a 17-year-old the chance, give him an opportunity to take that chance. And he didn't even get that. I wouldn't expect to see him start. I would think Maresca will want to get the job done. If he was given some minutes at the end of the game, if it's considered done and dusted this tie, he might come on. But because ultimately Maresca's going to need to do something to get some confidence back in that kid, because he might have really damaged him there. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about the young guy, but Moheca, is it Moheca?
Yeah,
I don't know exactly.
To be honest though, mate, if he started in the first leg, there was far more pressure on the first leg than there is the second leg. So, I
agree, but I think Maresca misjudged the level of that tie. I really do. I think he was really surprised at how that first half went, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no,
Did he make 3 changes at halftime?
Well, we had Gusto off early on. That was one.
Yeah.
And then at half-time, he brought on Nkunku, Enzo, and Colwill. But I think 2 of those were probably pre-planned in terms of Enzo and Caicedo 45 each, and probably Badia Shield 45 because it was his first game after being out for a few months. So you could argue really the only change that was perhaps to change the game as such was in Nkunku for Shim. Other than that, mate, I think the other subs we saw at halftime were probably pre-planned.
They probably were. I can definitely buy into that. But yeah, I think he really gave that young guy the short straw there.
It was a bit of a weird one, those comments, weren't they? Because it was like you played him, and then when when you've got George and Moheca, it's more difficult. It's like, mate, he's got a bit of a habit. I don't know if it's lost in translation. I know English is not his first language. His English is not terrible, by the way. His English is pretty good, but certain things, you sort of read them. When you read things and then you listen to him saying them, it feels totally different. You know, that's why with certain things I'd always rather listen to him say it than just read it, because
you can read his body language and sort of I understand how it's meant to be, how it's meant to come across. I'd agree with you on that as well, and I do wonder how often there is a lack of understanding of the language with the translation and things like that. Because some things, as you say, they come across probably not how they're meant. I think the last thing he probably wanted to do was hurt those two's confidence, but I think ultimately he may have done so. So I feel like he needs to build them back up. But so do you think he might start Maresca then?
Mate, I think he will, personally. I think, you can't afford really to be without. You don't want, the problem is though, you don't want anyone to get injured. Now, whether people start or come off the bench, you could get injured warming up. You can get injured whether you play 10 minutes or whether you play 80 minutes or whatever. But you want to try and minimize the you want to try and minimize the risk of injury for players.
Yeah. It's getting to that stage in the season, isn't it? I mean, Liverpool had two players break down last night in Konate and Trent.
Trent and Konate, yeah.
Yeah, it's getting to that stage where I completely agree with you. The worst thing for us would be for more injuries, because when we're doing this, Charlie, when we were doing this earlier on in the season for the Conference League, we had an abundance of names that we couldn't decide who was going to play. Now we're struggling to find players because we've left ourselves so light.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't even, sorry, he didn't even mention the new kid, Amugu, in midfield. The guy didn't even make the bench. We added him to the Conference League squad. The lad didn't even make the bench, I don't think, against Copenhagen in the first leg. And then, I mean, Maresca himself's openly admitted, this guy's not going to play very much. And he's sort of like, if you're having to play Enzo and Caicedo in Conference League games and you've signed a midfielder and you feel that this guy can't actually contribute in a Conference League campaign, what are we doing?
Yeah, I fully believe this guy currently doesn't have a future at Chelsea, and he's going to be loaned out to Strasbourg.
He's replacing Andre Santos at Strasbourg
exactly.
Next season.
And I think it was solely that he'd come in on the back of an emergency, come in on an emergency basis. If he's needed, he plays. He looked so raw when he played very few minutes, didn't he, against Southampton, was it? I can't remember.
Come on against Southampton for about 10 minutes or something at the end. Yeah.
You can't learn anything about the player in that moment. I mean, I saw a picture on Twitter that he's pictured in the training today. So he's obviously available and fit for selection. But yeah, there's no trust there for the manager to potentially give him the opportunity. Maybe it's another one that if he is fit and available and there's a tie that's done and dusted, he could protect another player that's guaranteed to be starting against Arsenal at the weekend. So yeah, he should arguably be on the bench, shouldn't he? Ready for minutes, I would say, in this fixture. And if he isn't, then there's obviously doubt over what level he's truly at, considering he's played a number of minutes already this season at his previous club.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. By the way, guys, keep smashing the like button. Poor amount of likes at the moment. Probably go for another 10 minutes or so, people. So make sure you smash that like button. Let's get this up towards the 100 likes mark. We're a couple away from 50. Come on, guys. Run it up. Really helps more than you can imagine. And yeah, please do subscribe if you are new round here as well. Mate, we're heading into the run-in now as well. I mean, we're fourth right now. We're 2 points ahead of Man City and Newcastle, 5th and 6th. We're 2 points off 3rd place. I feel like if you told any Chelsea fan in mid-March that you'd be 4th, 2 points behind 3rd place, they'd be delighted. But I get I sort of sense that and know that there's still not that much of a positive feel around Chelsea and around what we're doing. Obviously, we've got a difficult run-in, difficult fixtures to end the season, but at this stage of the season, this has got to be on par with expectations, surely.
Yeah, I agree. They were level with mine for hiring Maresca and the way the squad was sort of being put together over the summer. That I felt that if we could finish the season in the top 5 and go and I think the biggest letdown for Chelsea fans right now, and I think this has been hugely not maybe misunderstood, but maybe misinterpreted by the board and the sporting directors, is how important as a club we might deem domestic trophies, no matter what they provide. Yeah, no matter what they provide financially. I think as a club and as a fan base, we're eager to win them as often as we can. And I think they may have just got that one wrong. And I feel like that has incredibly hurt Maresca, that what the project was trying to be this season. And I feel like that has definitely breeded some toxicity in the fan base because we're very frustrated that ultimately it feels like regression that we didn't progress in those competitions as well as we did last season. I think that's and I think Maresca's comments around those haven't gone down too well. And I think saying that sort of stuff around a huge period where we had a massive lack in form and only 3 wins in 15 or 14, I think it was at the time. It was hurtful. It wasn't right. And I think there's now a lot of negative energy. I know there's been a lot of remarks about the atmosphere and stuff. Chelsea need.
That's not a Maresca problem, though, mate. That's been
prior
for
to Maresca,
years.
yeah.
Years
I
and
think.
years.
I think I would say honestly, probably post-COVID, I would say that's been an issue at Stamford Bridge, to be honest. Even because, I mean, when we were winning the Champions League, we barely had fans at the ground. So the atmosphere's never really recovered on the back of that, to be honest with you. I think it's been harder and harder for members to get tickets in recent years, which I think has ultimately impacted the atmosphere and things like that.
And also, mate, really, we go a lot. Really, there's 2 stands that are fans. Matthew Arden lower and upper, and Shed lower and upper.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of the West Stand is hospitality, and a lot of the East Stand is hospitality now as well. And when that happens, and you've really got only 2 stands that are making noise, it's going to be an atmosphere. It's going to be a problem with atmosphere. But generally speaking, mate, I don't think this is just a Chelsea issue. I think across the Premier League.
Oh yeah, because even on away days, you see it, don't you?
With the exception of 1 or 2, generally speaking, most home atmospheres aren't very good.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's a number of teams that have done well and they've maintained it. But yeah, a lot of teams, especially, I think the problem for Chelsea is we were a club that made Stamford Bridge a fortress for so many years. The atmosphere was really, really good, and we did make it difficult for teams. And I think the atmosphere really can help a team to go on and get more points if it's behind its team, it's loud. Stamford Bridge is intimidating, it's very close to the pitch, and I feel like that is something that we've lost, and it's an edge that this club no longer has at this moment in time. You make a really good point about the 2 stands. I wonder if there's a potential of merging the 2 together to potentially create a loud at one end, to be honest with you, because I feel like that's something that could really help. Would be to regenerate that atmosphere. But look, the running looks incredibly tough going forwards, and Chelsea are going to have to be ready to go for that and ready to navigate it on all fronts, because the Conference League is something that's going to be there till the end of the season. We're not going to have to rotate.
Yeah, but you look at it though, and like you're right, we're 4th, we're 2 points off 3rd, but also, and I don't want to look at things in a negative way, but you've got to provide both aspects of it. You're 2 points off 3rd, but you're also 5 points away from 9th.
Yeah.
So,
I was just looking at that. Fulham are still in with a chance, aren't they?
Like, Fulham,
of potentially getting themselves some sort of European football.
7 points. So yeah, you're looking at it, and you got right. We're in 4th on 49, but then anywhere down to we're 3 points away from 7th place, 4 points from 8th, 5 from 9th.
It's really turned into a one-horse league this season, hasn't it? I'm just looking at the points. 15 points. Arsenal are definitely closer to potentially not being in the top 4 than ever being in the title race now. In the running,
100% they are, mate. 100% they are. But you look at it, right, and you think, right, okay, this, by the way, this 4th and this race for Champions League football, I honestly think these positions are going to chop and change pretty much every weekend. I mean, Forest are playing Ipswich this weekend, so you probably give them 3 points in that one. Man City play Brighton. One team is dropping points there. We're playing Arsenal. One team's dropping points there. This is pretty much a race for 3rd place. But what's really frustrating is that even though our squad's not really ready to challenge, and I'm not saying we would have challenged Liverpool, if we just won 2 or 3 more matches, if we'd beaten Ipswich, if we'd beaten Fulham on Boxing Day, we'd be 2nd.
I think that's where a huge amount of frustration comes from as well, Charlie, is that dip in form was so for me, it was unexpected. A lot of people said, no, I saw it coming. But for me, it was unexpected.
I think
it was avoidable as well. Yeah, I think it was avoidable to the extent that it went on for. Ultimately, I mean, like you said, right at the top of the show, the 2 fixtures we've had again for Leicester and Southampton came at the best time for Maresca, massively. I mean, the West Ham result was pretty much just overshadowed off the back of more poor performances in the league around that fixture. So, yeah, he needed those fixtures. When you look at the table there, it looks fairly healthy. I think if you look at it with a little bit more detail, there are definite games that could have been avoided, ended in the way that they did. And I feel like that just sounds a little bit like a broken record, because how many games were there last season that Pochettino could have done something that wasn't drastic at all, and we probably could have had more points than we did. So
well, if we hadn't drawn 2-2 against Burnley and drawn 2-2 against Sheffield United, then we would have been finished 4th.
Yeah, and we threw points away against Brentford away and later on in the season and things like that were just real silly errors last season. I think Chelsea fans are getting a little bit fed up with having to sort of repeat that and the fact that it happened again. But ultimately, that is what happens with young and inexperienced players and an inexperienced manager. I think Chelsea should be looking around, probably around 60 points, maybe 65 at an absolute push this season, before a ball was kicked. So the fact that we look like we might be on target to do that is okay. I saw, I don't know if you saw it, John Obi Mikel.
Yeah.
And they mentioned the run into him, and he's pretty much written off the season.
The running's tough. And do you know what the problem with the running is, right? I'm not saying we can't get any results or we can't do it. The problem is, and the unfortunate reality is, that we've got to do something we've not done for a long time. We've got to beat 2 decent teams away from home, minimum.
Yeah,
we're going away to Arsenal, we're going away to Newcastle, we're going away to Forest. If we're going to finish in the Champions League places, I know other results will come in, but those two of those 3 away games, Arsenal, Forest, and Newcastle, we probably need to win 2 of those. And we haven't won an away game against a traditional Big Six side outside of Tottenham since Lukaku and Reece James scored at the Emirates when we beat Arsenal the season after we won the Champions League.
Yeah.
We haven't done anything since August 2021, winning away at a big team.
Did we go top of the league that day? I think, didn't we?
And we've got to now, having not done something for nearly 4 years, we've got to go and do that probably twice in the last 10 games. I don't want to.
I think that's what makes that running so tough, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I look at those fixtures there. I think last season, Chelsea Brentford was a 2-2 draw, was a tough fixture. Chelsea
Brentford
Tottenham
away is
Chelsea.
tough.
Yeah, Chelsea Spurs. I mean, normally statistically we win that one, don't we? Arsenal obviously at the weekend was a 5-0 batter in last season, 5-1, 5-0. Chelsea Everton. I never know what to expect in that fixture.
We beat them 6-0, didn't we, last season? But then I think under Graham Potter we drew with them 2-2. But I mean, let me just bring the fixtures up on the screen so it's a bit easier. But all right, so we've got second leg. Yep. Then it's Arsenal international break. Then it's Spurs home. Brentford away is tough. Ipswich at home, you'd expect that to be 3 points, but they beat us, obviously, earlier in the season. And it will be a similar game to Leicester. They'll sit deep. They'll make it difficult. Fulham away, you never know what you're going to get. And then
Did they beat us last season, I think?
At the Cottage?
Yeah.
No, I think we won at the Cottage last season because Mudryk scored his first goal.
They beat us at home, didn't they? At home this season we lost, didn't we?
Yeah, at home this season they beat us 2-1 on Boxing Day. Yeah. And then you've obviously got Everton at home. You'd expect to beat them. I know they're slightly better under Moyes, but you'd expect to beat them. But then, mate, these last 4 games: Liverpool home, Newcastle away, Man United home, Forest away.
Charlie? Did we have that exact run of fixtures earlier on in the season, just before Christmas? Those 4.
Well, we had something similar, didn't we? When we had Liverpool away,
because I remember the new.
Because it wasn't it? It was Liverpool at home. It was Liverpool away. Sorry. Then it was like Newcastle home. Then it was United away, Arsenal home.
And I think Forest were in the mix, were they not?
Forest might have been a couple of weeks before that potentially, but yeah, no, mate, this is it. You know, you look at these last 4 games here, and you're thinking, really.
Charlie, we did. We had Nottingham Forest, Liverpool, Newcastle, United. So yeah, pretty much those 4 fixtures. We got a win against Newcastle in the league and drew every other fixture. No, lost to
We lost
Liverpool.
to Liverpool and we drew the other 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at that and I just think Newcastle and Forest away in the last 3.
It's tough. It is really tough. I can see why Mikel didn't have much confidence in it. We've got to make sure that we've picked up a huge. Realistically, Everton, Fulham, Ipswich. That should be 9 points going into that running.
It has to be. It has to
give
be
us the best chance of Champions League football. Because, to be honest, I would say dependent. But it's really tough because Newcastle and Nottingham Forest could still be in with a shout of fighting for something.
Forest could have potentially already qualified by that point. This is where it might work in our favour, right? Liverpool at home, for example, probably with 4 games to go, have already won the league, you'd imagine. So maybe there's not as much pressure on them. That might suit us potentially. I mean, kind of clutching at straws here, but maybe that suits us. Newcastle away, our record there is absolutely horrendous. They're probably going to be fighting for the Champions League still, like us. Man United, doesn't matter how bad they are, terrible record against them. And then the only thing we can hope for with Forest is that maybe they've already qualified for the Champions League by then. So the pressure's off them as well. But the reality is, mate, right now, looking at this, I don't feel confident that we can get the results that we need.
How many points out of those last 4 games do you think realistically we end up with?
4. I'll be honest, maybe 5. I think maybe we win 1 and we win 1, couple draws and we lose one of those games.
United could be on holiday by then.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd say we lose against Newcastle away. I think we can beat United at home, point against Liverpool, and then Forest, fuck knows. We're going to get
Forest, you just don't know, because I actually found that ground really intimidating last season. I thought they were incredibly loud, very tough fixture. We did well to win that in the last moments, didn't we?
I think we were 2 goals up. We were a goal up, and then we fucked it. Went 2-1 down, then we got it
2-1 at half time. I think were we not?
Yeah.
And then, or 1-0 half. I can't remember, but yeah, it was a good performance in the fact that we showed some fight. I think Reece come off the bench, didn't he? But it's going to be
pretty quickly,
a real tough run-in, and I think it is so important that points are obviously picked up on the way. The thing is that obviously that fixture, this isn't showing us right now, is the fact that there's going to be another
Conference League games in there. Yeah,
7. Probably 5 Conference League fixtures.
4. It'll be 5 more Conference League games. Yeah.
If we're to go the distance. So that starts to look incredibly difficult to navigate with the squad and the rotations that are going to be needed, and the fact that hopefully we get some players come back from injury. But right now, if the squad doesn't see those players return from injury or picks up any more, it's going to be really difficult. Like, I would think some fatigue would creep in there.
Yeah, luckily it's going to be the same for everyone. But I mean, look, this race for the top 4, probably one of the most exciting in recent years. It's going to be twists and turns. I think it's going to be changing every single weekend. We just got to hope that we are in the right place. But yeah, probably going to round that one out there, guys. Dan, thanks so much for your time, bro. Greatly appreciated as always. Let the people know where to find you if they don't know.
Yeah, it's just at BDB Dan on all the socials. Just talking about Chelsea as well. Absolute pleasure being on, Charlie. I feel like we needed a chat. We haven't had one in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, mate. It's been a while. It's always a pleasure. Guys, make sure you check out Dan's channel. Loads of great content over there. It's tagged in the title. Click on there. Go over to him. Subscribe. Please smash the likes on the way out, people. Let's get this up towards 100 likes. So run the likes up. Subscribe to myself. And guys, we'll be back again with more content coming tomorrow. And then obviously we got a load of Arsenal previews coming as well to end the week. So make sure you're locked in for all the latest content, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the game tomorrow. And I'll catch you again soon. Up the Chelsea, and we're out.